The structure of language, meaning. What is meaning? What is the meaning of life? No, we're not going to worry about that in this class right now. We're just going to worry about meaning in general and what's the best way to describe meaning and how do we apprehend meaning. In the next video, we're also going to look at various definitions. I don't expect you to be able to do a really deep dive into semantics and meaning because that's something that many linguists have been working many years on, and there's still an awful lot that we have to learn. Okay, so let's look at the word meaning, okay, or the word mean. She means no harm. Those clouds mean it will rain later. This gift means a lot to me. What does her absence mean? The word soporific means inducing sleep. So we can see that this is the word mean, and does it have slightly different connotations or indications? So she means no harm. What's a synonym? What's another word we can come up for? She intends no harm. She intends no harm. So in this case, it means intent. Those clouds mean it will rain later. What's something else we can say? What about those clouds? Indicate it will rain later. This gift means a lot to me. What's a synonym? Conveys, okay, signifies a lot to me, but it conveys a lot to me. What does her absence mean? What does it signify? And the word soporific means inducing sleep, so it is equal to. The word soporific equals inducing sleep. So we can see that even the word mean has many different meanings. And how do we decide if there's a basic meaning or if there's just a whole bunch or what it indicates to a lot of people? This is a really thorny question. So the centrality, actually meaning is the crucial thing about linguistics. It's semantics, and it's the oldest area of linguistic analysis. That's what everyone wanted to know. What does this word mean? What's the definition of this word? What does it, how do we use it? What does it mean? But underlyingly, it's what we need for most of the other areas. So for instance, remember in phonology when we did minimal pairs and we had things like, for instance, pat and bat, that the only difference in meaning is that one sound, the p and the b, but it's the fact that meaning is involved that made it important. Morphology, one form, one meaning, but also the sense that when you've got that more little morphemes will change the meaning of a word. So for instance, if you say union and then you put the prefix dis on it, that prefix has a meaning and it changes the meaning of the word from a positive to a negative, disunion. Syntax, ambiguous strings. So the horse ran behind the barn and fell. Does that mean that the horse lost his footing and is now on the ground, or behind the barn and fell, which is a kind of grassy area? So there's ambiguous strings and you have to decide what it is that things mean. Or for instance, another sentence would be, yeah, John saw the soldier with a telescope. So who's got the telescope? Does John have the telescope or does the soldier have the telescope? And the way the strings are structured changes the meaning. So this is a really pretty fundamental thing, and it's also probably, I would say, the slipperiest area of linguistics. It's really hard to get a grasp on it. So you've been warned, don't try to really get into it deeply. It's always going to be problematic. So, problem of meaning and definitions is these infinite loops where all of a sudden you just get back to, you start with wanting to know one word and then you just can never really find the definition except by using the same word. So let's look at the word fight, for instance, here. A confrontation between opposing groups, a quarrel or a conflict. So what does a quarrel mean? Oh, it means an angry dispute, an altercation. What does an altercation mean? Oh, it means a quarrel. So there we are going right back. Okay, if we go here, well, it's maybe a conflict. Let's look up conflict. Oh, how about that? Back to fight. Okay, battle, fighting, back to that. Okay, combat, fighting, especially in armed battle. Okay, confrontation, the act of confronting or the state of being confronted, especially a meeting face to face. Okay, what the heck does this or this, the act of confronting or the state of being confronted, does that help you with confrontation? No, so it's really difficult to come up with definitions. So that's the circularity. What is the definition? It's you need to describe a word, but you use other words, and then you need the meaning of those other words in order to give you the definition of the first word. So you get a little bit, it can be a little bit hairy and very difficult to really grasp. For instance, let's look at the word ferret. Okay, it's a weasel-like, usually albino mammal. I didn't know it was usually albino, related to the polecat. Okay, I was raised in Brooklyn. I don't know if you could tell, but I was raised in Brooklyn. I don't know what a polecat is, and I'm not really quite sure what a weasel is. I know what albino and I know what mammal means, but these two words are not going to help me figure what this is. So the terms in the definition might be less familiar than the word you're looking up. So I'm looking up ferret. I don't know what it is. Oh, it's a weasel that looks like a polecat. Duh. That means nothing. Okay. Are they basic words, words that everyone understands or knows? That's a good question. Are definitions lexical, pictorial, something else? I mean, how do you determine what to define? Okay. We do think about mentalese, which is a non-natural language of thought. By non-natural, what we mean is that it is not spoken or expressed outward, but it's when you think. You don't necessarily think in a language. We've all had experiences where we feel something, but we don't have the words to put it in, or usually it has to do with feelings, things like that. Or you work out something but you don't think it through. You just know. You grasp something. The idea pops into you. Um, but it's not necessarily using language. Let's try something. I'm going to give you a bunch of words and sort them into three columns, okay? So these are the words. Child, rooster, mare, man, cow, piglet, lamb, hen, stallion, chick, sow, bull, ram, ewe, boar, woman, calf, foal. Okay, so what I want you to do is to sort them into three columns. Okay, press on the pause button here because you're going to need some time to do this. Okay, so take a few minutes. Okay, when you're back, click on the play button once you've done all of you're putting them in columns. Did you do it like this? So we've got man, woman, child. So stallion, mare, foal, bull, cow, calf, ram, ewe, lamb, boar, sow, piglet, rooster, hen, chick. So one way to do it, for instance, is by you separate out the youngins here. Okay, so this is the juveniles. And then after that, for the adults, you separate them according to sex. So you've got the man and woman, or the male and the female. That's one possibility. But could there be another way of dividing them? For instance, you could have things that are edible, but that you want to eat. Cow, calf. I hate to say it like that, but there it is. Lamb, and things that are maybe dangerous, or there's all kinds of ways of categorizing this. Now, let's do these. Again, sort the following into two groups. We've got a nice group. Aren't they gorgeous? Look at those colors. Okay. So we've got broccoli and carrots, and we've got grapes. We've got the purple grapes and the green ones, and then the red grapes. Don't they look good? And this lovely, lovely tomato. And we've got a nice juicy strawberry and an apple and some lettuce, and then we've got a watermelon. Okay, so now sort it into two groups. Okay, press on the pause button again. Okay, do your sorting. And now you can start again. So what are your groupings? I mean, there's two possibilities. You could do fruits and vegetables, or you could do green fruits as opposed to the red yellow kind of things. Usually, if you're into nutrition, that's kind of an important thing to do. Although I'm not sure what you would do with watermelon because it's like green on the outside but red on the inside. And what you do with the grapes, I guess you just put them in different groupings. But so, what are your groupings and what is the basis for your groupings? Again, fruit, vegetable, color. Okay. Where did you put this guy? Okay, this is the tomato. Now, if you did it in color, that's pretty easy. You just put it with the red vegetables or the red foods. Okay, but if you decide to do fruits or vegetables, what do you do with the tomato? See, now this is interesting because horticulturally speaking, the tomato is a vegetable. Okay, it's a vegetable because it's produced by a plant that's an annual and non-woody. Fruits like apples, cherries, bananas, and oranges grow on a woody plant. I mean, think about it. Trees. You don't hear about a tomato tree. You hear about a tomato plant, and everyone's got a tomato plant in their garden, right? But here, fruits like apples or cherries, etc., they're on trees. They're on woody plants. Botanically speaking, however, it's a fruit. So is watermelon, green pepper, eggplant, cucumber, squash, because a fruit is any fleshy material covering a seed or seeds. So it's a fruit, whereas a potato is not a fruit because it's a tuber. It grows underground and it does not cover seed or seeds. Legally, the tomato's a vegetable. Okay, and this is from 1893 and it had something to do with taxes and that kind of thing. And so the United States Supreme Court ruled that the tomato was a vegetable. So if the justices said so, then it is. Okay? But we've got horticulturally speaking and botanically speaking and legally speaking. So exactly which is it, fruit or vegetable? Okay? So we've got linguistic knowledge versus encyclopedic knowledge. Now, encyclopedic knowledge means basically knowledge that rests in the mind of the speakers. Okay? What is it that you think, as opposed to what the definition is necessarily in the dictionary, but what does it mean to you? And do you all have to have the same knowledge to have the same meaning? Okay? For instance, what's this a picture of? It's a dolphin, right? So, I mean, it's either, well, actually, I'm lying. It's a dolphin or maybe it's a porpoise. I can't really tell the difference. But we know that it's some kind of sea critter that's got a little hole on top of its head and probably laughs a lot, seems to have a smile. Okay, just looks like a happy little thing, doesn't it? All right. So, yes, it's a dolphin. It's not a porpoise, but it's a dolphin. Both people here. Okay, she says it's a dolphin, and he says it's a dolphin. And dolphins are mammals, dolphins are fish. Okay, which are they? Okay, mammals because they're warm-blooded, but fish because they live in the ocean. They both know it's a dolphin, but do they have a different idea? Does dolphin mean something different to either one of them? And is it important? That's another question, too. Does the word mean the same thing to these two people? They probably could point to it, and they could probably tell you that they like to see the dolphin shows at SeaWorld or whatever. But is it important that one person thinks it's mammals and the other one thinks it's fish? Other problem of meaning. It's mid-January in Phoenix, and a friend of yours who lives in Buffalo, New York. Now, we all know about Buffalo, New York. Lake effect snow, cold. Comes off the plane in a parka and heavy boots, complaining about how difficult it'd been to get to the airport. Oh, gosh. Blizzards, etc. You leave the terminal and out of Terminal 4, walking into the perfect 73-degree temperature, and it's like, oh, wonderful weather here. What does she mean? Well, it's a happy thing. This is great weather. Okay, she's coming out of some really bad weather, and now it's like, oh, nice, you could take off the parka and the boots. Now it's mid-July, and that same friend arrives at the airport, walks out in the blazing sun, it's only 115 degrees, right? And says, wonderful weather here. Does she mean the same thing that she meant in January? Probably not. Here we've got an example of what's called sarcasm. So we need to distinguish between the semantic meaning, so the meaning content derived from words and sentences, so compositional, meaning basically the roots of the words and the morphemes that go with it, and the sentences and how they're put together, and that kind of construction. And then the speaker meaning, the meaning intended by the speakers. So that could be counter to the literal meaning, and it's very much dependent on the context of speech. That's where sarcasm comes in. This is where we get irony. Okay, all of these are important because they very much depend on how you interpret the meaning that you give, but also going against the literal meaning. Okay. So, same thing. What is meaning? Words or images? What does chair mean? How do you define chair? Okay. What does green mean? Now, green can have a whole bunch of different meanings, right? What do you think it means? What about spiral? What does that mean? We've got ideas in defining. We have the necessary criteria or fuzzy categories. So there are things that we need in order. What's the absolute definite thing that we need in order to define something? Or are there areas where there's like fuzziness? So, for instance, bird. Okay, what do you do with a bird? Well, birds fly, don't they? Yeah. And generally they're covered by feathers and pretty much have a long beak. There's maybe a couple, like some macaws and things with like bent beaks, but generally they have a long beak. And size, they're not massive. I mean, the pterodactyls were from a long time ago. We don't really see huge birds anymore, right? Well, let's look at these. Okay, so this is what's called prototype semantics, central versus peripheral exemplars. So the central means essentially the image that comes into your mind when someone says the word bird. Okay, oh gee, I saw a bunch of birds in the backyard. They're thinking probably of things like robins or sparrows or doves, that sort of thing. It's unlikely that they're talking about penguins. Okay, might be a peacock, but most people wouldn't say bird, they'd say peacock. Okay, so the robin is like your prototypical bird. Okay, you can't get any birdier than a robin. Okay, but we also have doves and sparrows. Okay, canary because they're small and they have long beaks and they're covered with feathers and they fly. And then we've got the toucan, and that's a little bit different. The owl is maybe a little bit different. It tends to be more upright. It holds itself differently from the other birds. Okay. Pheasant tends to run along the ground. Think of roadrunners. Okay. Ducks are a little bit different too because they've got the webbed feet and they like to hang around in the water. Okay. Peacocks, well, peacocks are their very own special thing, right? They're a little bit prideful because of their feathers. But it's not the first thing that you think about when you think bird. Okay. Penguin is probably not either. They don't fly for one thing, and they like to they swim very well underwater. Okay, so they're probably the least birdy birds. Okay, ostriches, same thing. I don't think ostriches fly, and they're certainly pretty large. They're bigger than a robin, bigger than a dove, bigger than all of these other guys. So the ostrich is a peripheral exemplar. It's not, if someone asked you to draw a picture of a bird, you would draw something that looks more like this than like this. Okay. So meaning is a complex of several things and it exists on different levels simultaneously and you can access meaning through any one of those levels. And you really need to include all of the different components. Um, that's why describing meaning is difficult because it's many layers. Think of Shrek and the onion, okay? Onions have layers. Well, this meaning is like that too. There's a lot of layers. So there's different levels of meaning. So there's sense, which is the abstract definition. So you have a list of, criterial properties. Criterial properties is basically the definition, like for bird, the fact that it has feathers, the fact that it can fly, the fact that it has a long beak. Okay, and it's the common core. All speakers have a general idea about that. If you talk about a cat, something that says meow, small, covered with fur, cute, likes to live in the house, chase cats. chases mice, that kind of thing. We all know what a cat is, okay? We don't think of a tiger or of a lion immediately if you say the word cat, okay? So this is the common core that all speakers share, and it's also referred to as the intention. There's also a reference. So the reference is the actual entities, events, or properties in the real world. So, for instance, if I say cat, we all know that cats exist. You could point to a cat. You could pick up a cat and you could say, this is a cat, okay? Some words don't actually have a reference. But what's really interesting is that if I say things like unicorn, dragon, and Santa Claus, well, none of these actually exist in the real world. But if I said unicorn, you would all know exactly what a unicorn is. It looks like a horse, but it's got a great big horn on its nose. A dragon is a big thing that looks like a lizard, usually flies and spits fire. And Santa Claus is a jolly old, well, elf, no, jolly old man that likes to slide down chimneys and, whoops, and bring gifts. So some words, it's easy enough to define them by pointing to the real world examples. So color terms and shapes. Define blue. Yeah, right? It's easier to just show a picture of something that is blue, okay? Or to indicate. Same thing with shapes. Triangle, okay, you can get that, but oval, it's like roundish thing, but bigger on the bottom and smaller on top, or smaller at one end and bigger at the other end. It gets a little bit hard to really describe it, and it's easier to just point to one. Um, And there's also a certain independence of sense and reference. So, for instance, let's look at this. The same person, D.F. Duncan Sr., was the innovator of the serial box top mail-in, the popularizer of the yo-yo, and the marketer of the first parking meter. He was a busy man. Okay, so this is the reference. They all refer to him, but this all has different senses. Okay, and I'm sure that his kids refer to him as dad, and his wife refer to him as honey or sweetheart or whatever. So one word can have many different senses and references. Okay, levels of meaning. So we've got the connotation, and that's the emotional value of the word. Okay, it can be positive, it can be negative, it can be neutral, and it varies among speakers of the same language. So for um, some words can be more negative. Let's say they have a more negative connotation than a more positive connotation, so you have to look for things that are maybe a little bit more neutral. But the connotation is basically the emotional value of the word. Okay, here's an example from the Buffalo Evening News. Okay, one more call from the Nimrod. Yes, Nimrod is in the dictionary and it does mean mighty hunter and king. I really don't think the other caller has a grasp of English. He must be the product of public schools, probably a union member. Okay, we can take all kinds of meaning from here, okay? But let's face it, Nimrod is in the dictionary. It does mean mighty hunter and king. But come on, how many of you have used the word Nimrod? Well, if you use the word Nimrod, is this the way you use it to mean mighty hunter? Well, it's a noun, and it does in fact mean a hunter in the Bible, a mighty hunter and king of Shinar, who was a grandson of Ham and a great-grandson of Noah. Okay. Informally, a person regarded as silly, foolish, or stupid. Okay. And it comes from Bugs Bunny, who gave us that. Reference to Elmer Fudd, poor little Nimrod, which, as we know, Elmer is a hunter and not a very good one. So, in fact, the word Nimrod here is used here, this way. So, the dictionary definition, okay, is in fact, for Nimrod, is in fact hunter. The connotation is someone who's silly, foolish, or stupid. It's not a nice thing to call someone. There's also different levels of meaning in terms of registers, so the social value of a word. And, and the register determines which situations the word is appropriate for and which is not. So, all right, vomit. We've got throw up, upchuck, barf, hurl, ralph, purge, puke, spew, regurgitate, toss your cookies, lose your lunch, drive the porcelain butch, have a technicolor yawn, toss a sidewalk pizza, burp to the ninth power. I mean, all of these are really nice and colorful, okay? But all of these words here basically, words and expressions basically mean to vomit, okay? So you're at the doctor's office and the doctor says, well, how do you feel? And he said, I don't feel real well. I had to get up 3 times last night to toss my cookies, to lose my lunch. Well, no, we're talking in the middle of the night. To drive the porcelain bus? No. To throw up or to barf. Okay? So puke possibly. Um, which would you use to describe your symptoms to your mom? Probably fairly similar. Fairly similar to what you said to the doctor. You might say upchuck. Oh, yeah, I had to upchuck a bit. I had to barf. Oh, that stuff makes me barf. Could be one or the other. You're talking about a really wild weekend with your friends. Okay, that's where you might use the more colorful ones. Okay, so there's different places to use different words, and learning register is really important. And what's interesting is that frequently that's not really taught when you're learning a second language. Frequently, register is can be a problem where we're either taught to be way too formal, or sometimes people like to teach slang, but then not teach when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to use. So, excuse me, what's the first word that comes to mind? You've got tree, kitten, up, red, sofa, clean, fruit, warm, bug, present. Okay, tree, kitten, up, red, sofa, clean, fruit, warm, bug, present. Okay. Could be any of these things: house, branch, leaf, bark, root, apple, green, kitten, cute, milk, cat, dog, meow, up, down, sky, roof, arrow. There's all kinds of words that can come up for whatever reason. So some responses are unique, personal associations, and others will be syntagmatics, that is, things that are frequently used together, okay, such as, for instance, apple tree, okay, or red, blood red, okay, or red, it's a color. Sofa, sit on the sofa, okay, sit on the couch. To clean, okay, that's if it's the verb. Okay, scrub. Fruit. What's the first fruit? What fruit do you like is probably the one that's you're going to come up with. Okay. So, and present, well, birthday usually, or gift. A present is a gift. All right. So sometimes, take a look at your responses and see. Personal associations, tree. My brother's tall, so we'll call him Tree. Well, that will be really, really personal. Others syntagmatic. So tree and house, because you say tree house a lot. Clean and sober. Okay? So that indicates where things are being stored. So things like tree house and clean and sober, they're phrases, they're idioms, they're things that you just memorize, and they're stored as preformed phrases and you don't analyze them anymore. So we don't worry about clean and sober. What in fact does clean mean? Do you shampoo a lot or what? Okay. So the most frequent responses are meaning relations, and again, it indicates something about the organization of the mental lexicon. So quick association implies immediate access, and that means that your mental lexicon is similar to a thesaurus or possibly like a dictionary. Beginner language learners, if they have the same word association, they'll have formal similarity. Tree, try, they might go with that. So maybe it's stored like a dictionary. In other words, in alphabetical order or written order, because people are probably thinking in terms of the way words are written, because that's the way we learn language when we're adults. Okay, where thesaurus is meanings and words that are similar. Okay, now we'll move on to the next video.